We don't know obviously where those errors occurred on the field, but 16 of them you'll imagine they've occurred pretty much everywhere. And with Leeds only coughing the ball up 7 times, that's a big swing there. You don't see a difference between sides of that much very often, really.
It makes them the architects of their own downfall, doesn't it? But it's something that's fix-upable.
You would hope so, but it's a nasty habit. I remember middle of last year when Saints, before Catalan saw their arse fall out of their season, Saints were making error after error after error in the middle of the year and looked like it was costing them, but they got away with it in the end, so maybe Huddersfield can do the same. Individually, Mitch Garber, 143 metres, so big ones from Mitch again.
2 or 3 big weeks from Mitch Garber, hasn't it?
Big year and a half, Tom. If you look at his numbers from last year, he was making metres and metres and metres. It was just in a bad side, and they were ineffective because nothing was coming off the back of it, because they didn't have a player like Matt Parcell who had a try assist, 44 tackles.
Keep him like your dream team, kids. He's not getting a lot of points. Nothing to see here.
Jamie Jones Buchanan, 47 tackles. Adam Cuthbertson, 153 metres. Tom Briscoe, a try, 5 tackles, 105 metres. So a bit more like the Tom Briscoe we've known.
Tom Briscoe pre-Challenge Cup final.
Losers. That up to that point. Losers, Alex Mellor for them. Alex Mellor 107 metres, Lee Gaskell 110 metres. So plenty of contribution from the former Bradford players. So it's not necessarily the quality of the recruitment. That's the biggest issue there. Jerry McGilvery, a try and 3 successful offloads.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so at the same time on Friday night down at the Totally Wicked Stadium, in front of 11,598 people, St Helens were experiencing something pretty rare in recent history, a victory at home over, admittedly, a very hapless-looking Warrington Wolves side. Market finished 31 points to 6 in favour of the Saints.
And we start with Tyler Casfan. Saints played a clean game, very few errors, looked after the ball and took their chances. Warrington were the opposite, with errors, penalties and poor completion. Always look second best and need to put a lot of things right.
Why Joe says, I could just copy and paste everything that I've said all season. Utter dross. The dressing room has gone. The players aren't there physically, psychologically or even attitudinally, and I'm not sure what there can be done to arrest the freefall we're in right now. I smell the middle eights.
At Neil C5017 said, took us a while to get going, very impressed with Matty Smith, worst Warrington team I've seen in over 20 years.
I don't think that back far. They've been pretty poor within more recent memory than that, I would say. It's like a wire bash every so often. Wakey White, he did get in touch, and just the once on this one too. He said, tough game to watch. The Wolves were more like an injured dog waiting to be put out of its misery. Too many penalties and handling errors from Wire to really give themselves a chance. So hard to read too much into Saints' performance, although they look a lot sharper with the ball now that Matty Smith is back.
Aidan Stalker says, loving the growing understanding between Farge and Percival. Looks like Swift is getting his confidence back too, so that side should cause plenty of damage this season. Matty Smith was okay, a few shaky kicks, but he'll improve over the next few weeks. Anything that keeps Wilkin in his best position is a good thing. Lee over Roby though, madness. Yeah. Wyatt, look, a rabble, even with Chris Hill looking lost at times. Oh well.
Well, it's Frogmore with this one.
Hold on.
Go on.
Seeing as Aidan's the only one to bring it up, I think. Lee over Roby.
Well, it won.
But it didn't, did it? Because they had every opportunity in the first 20 minutes to score points, and they scored none.
So what's the logic
until Roby came up? Well, it's so
if
that
you're Kieran Cunningham, what's the logic?
It's so that James Roby isn't completely flogged by the time you get to the semi-finals. And if you're winning games still, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah. No,
that's the only thing I could possibly come up with, is that this is an idea now that James Roby's ageing is to not have him be a battered 80-minute hooker. I saw it happen by degrees much less with Adam O'Brien last year at the Bulls. Quality player, capable of turning a game on its head and running it from dummy half. Absolutely arsehole and gassed by the end of the season because flogged for 80 minutes and not given that respite. And I think this is actually quite a sensible approach. Tommy Lee is not the greatest hooker in the world, and you're not going to get your most dynamic play out of him, but in terms of what he brings for your investment in James Roby, I think it's a solid move. And they won.
Yeah, I think it's, if they come up against teams that are going to give him less ball, it might become a factor, I don't know. But the way they're playing right now, all it needed was Roby to come on and actually get the machine properly going after it had been warmed up, let's say.
And give it another few weeks, they're still going to have Matty Smith on the field, so you go from, it's a different approach
and
to
if
the game.
Lomax comes back, you've got another sort of attacking weapon there. Yeah, so Cheeky Frogmore, Tom.
Cheeky Frogmore, great work this. He says, can't really review it by a week, can I?
Lee Whitnell says, Saints put in a shaky display with plenty of errors that any other Super League team would have punished them for. Luckily for them, they played a team utterly devoid of attacking threat and always willing to concede possession to let them off the hook. Fucking diabolical, Wire. Wank, wank, wank. That is all.
I'm loving these at the minute. St. David gets in touch. He says, Saints' improvement in form continues with the anti-grind, offloading, wide passing style proving effective and pleasing the fans into the bargain. We told you so, Kieran. Smith had a very good third debut, kicking well and organising the team. Walmsley continues to rack up huge metres and Ty Percival looks a deadly edge. Might call it the golden edge. Wyatt Wadaya.
Paul Ludo Lewis says, to be sung to the tune of London's Bridge, Kevin Brown is going down, going down, going down. Kevin Brown is going down, snaky bastard.
There you go. Fortunately, Paul is... I'll tell you what, for all the Kevin Brown bashing that Paul and other Widnes fans are occasionally engaging in, if you turned around now and said, we'll loan him back to you for the rest of the season, they would snap their fucking hands off.
Oh, yeah.
Of course they would. Okay, Tom McLean99 will give him the last word. He says, all I am saying is that less teams have won whatever that trophy Leeds got last year than have won the Super League. It must be an elaborate plan.
It's fucking elaborate, because that trophy is only between Leeds and Lee. But we'll make some up for Warrington in the Super 8 if they want.
Look, Warrington are garbage, and I think the feedback has covered a great deal of this. It does seem like systemically within the club something is going awry, whether it's because of Tony Smith. I don't know if he's stagnant there or whether he's lost elements of the dressing room, but I genuinely thought when Chris Hill came back into that side a couple of weeks ago that you were going to see an uptick in their performances because of how talismanic he's been for them. And I'm certainly not laying the blame at his door because there's a lot of players at Warrington that are underperforming and they're not getting things right. But I thought you'd see your talismanic captain come back in and lift the squad and he would kind of bond them together again. And that's failed to happen. And it's not like there's a major injury crisis. It's not like they've been torn asunder by injuries. They're missing a couple of players and there's a couple of key ones in the with like Ben Curry being out. But there's still players in there that are more than capable of doing it. Jack Hughes is still there. In the second.
Well, they signed Andres Savelio as a patch, didn't they, for the Ben Curry injury, and he started the season very well.
Yeah, absolutely. They've still got that dynamic pair of hookers, so it's not like things are being torn apart for Warrington. So there's got to be something going on back though. Behind the scenes, aren't there?
Teams are winning the middle against them, and I have watched this game, but I watched it sort of whilst doing housework and stuff, so the actual intricacies of it I can't remember, but I remember often thinking Warrington actually didn't look that terrible at a lot of times in this game, but then they'd make a mistake, or they weren't thinking about building pressure and that sort of stuff, maybe because they're under so much pressure because of their form, their confidence is so low, making them feel under pressure that they're not being able to execute a game plan, and they're just reverting to one-out stuff, which works for them when they're on top, but they need to program the mind to think a little bit differently, like, what are these guys doing that's stopping me doing what I want to be doing? So you're not seeing the best, even though you're still seeing flashes out of Clark, you're still seeing like little bits of Gidley or Brown, but their kicking game isn't putting the pressure on the opposition. They're making too many mistakes in the opposite when they are building some territory, and I don't know, maybe what summed it up was that Rashford pass that he just dropped. He just dropped the ball, but then the try they scored was really neat stuff that Saints couldn't cope with.
And he's another one when the lineups were out. I thought, Rashford back at fullback, that'll do him some good.
Yeah.
Really, the only...
Toby King was back in as well, and he's a talented,
the young lad Johnson
player
on the wing was like, I'm looking at it going, well, that's not ideal for them. But really, looking at the lineups that were put out, that was a team that could have beaten St Helens.
Oh, certainly.
They
had Crosby back for this one as well as Rashford.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. not sure how much Ben Westwood's up to being a starting player in the second row anymore.
That's done, isn't it? I would say.
But is move him into the middle and see if you can't put Mike Cooper maybe out in the second row. I'm not sure. Or get Savelio back to what he was doing at the start of the year. It baffles me. You think when they lost to Castleford, they weren't a million miles away from Castleford. It was just Castleford were absolutely outstanding for 15 minutes, and then outside of that, Warrington were their measure. For 40 minutes against Brisbane, they were flawless. Now, there's an element of luck involved in having such a flawless performance of a rugby league game, because you have to take things sometimes close to the line. You have to sometimes go into contact and trust that you're going to get the ball away clean, keep hold of the ball in a tough situation, or what have you. And they did everything. Everything came off in that first half of that Brisbane game. But for everything to keep not coming off, I can't believe it's going to keep going on. Against Wigan they had chances. Against Saints they had chances. Like with the occasion when Matty Smith kicked out on the full, and I thought, well, Warrington can maybe at least impose something, give themselves some confidence to go forward with.
You'll be in there, let's see how they go.
But let's go on and let's talk. We've done Warrington. Have you got anything more to say about Wire?
Just in terms of Savelio, I think he's the answer in second row. The ones that we've talked about, Westwood and people like that, he's the younger, more athletic lateral player that suits that position more. That's what I'd be doing, is looking at deploying him there more and trying to plug that gap there.
Maybe the question is defence attitude. But let's move to Saints, who I think have started to play. What's notable is we've had probably more St Helens fans in this feedback than we've ever had
for a long time.
One episode from St Helens fans for probably 2 years. And they're all saying the same sorts of things in terms of the style of play making them more attractive and happy, and maybe hopefully the totally wicked crowds will go up and a little bit, because they're hovering around the 10,000, but they've been averaging around 11.5 in the past few years. When maybe before what was his name, Brown came in and just wrestled and muddled and didn't. People blame Michael Maguire for bringing the wrestling to Super League. Watch Huddersfield before he turned up, and Nathan Brown was brought in at Huddersfield, was the first place that really took off. But they did it well, But that's all. That seems to have gone, and maybe like Cunningham and Longer trusting their instincts that they had as players a little bit more. And with Matty Smith isn't the most creative genius out there, but he holds all together what the rest of them can't do, and stops John Wilkin thinking he can do all that, when John Wilkin has a great skill set as a back rower to be creative, but as a halfback he doesn't have the required skill set to go along with what he knows needs to happen. The kick out on the full at the end of the Wakefield game, was it? Was it the Wakefield game?
2 weeks ago,
That emphasised that completely.
He's a screwdriver, not a scalpel.
And so having Matty Smith, who can actually execute those sorts of kicks, put in the kick that for the Jack Owens try. If Luke Gale had done that, if George Williams had done that, we'd all be banging on about it all weekend, about the glorious play of young British halfbacks, etc., etc. Well, Matty Smith did it. He's got the skill set to contribute, at least, even though he's not the flashiest of halfbacks. But he can bring a control to the kicking game that Saints haven't had, which allows, off the back of Walmsley, who's in the England conversation now, is because he's cut out the stupid crap mistakes. Okay, he had the flashpoint at Hull, but outside of that, he's cut out the stupid. Oh, it was at Hull, the kick out on the full by Wilkin. But and off the back of that, they've now got the edges working a little bit better. I mean, the right edge still needs work, but the left edge is coming together in attack massively. And so Saints are enjoyable to watch again, which we've not had that whilst this podcast has existed. They've not been enjoyable to watch.
No, and one of the things that I would say about that is that for almost the entirety of the time that the podcast has existed, is that Saints haven't always been able to get their select attacking outlets on the field consistently together for long enough. Now, admitting that they're still missing Johnny Lomax, but Look what happens when Mark Purcell gets himself fit and gets a protracted run in the team. Look what happens when Johnny Lomax comes back out of last season and the beginning of this. All of a sudden, they do start to have that attacking threat a bit more.